Radio on WGDR 91.1 and WGDH 91.7.
All right, guys, you are tuning in to WGDR, Plainville WGDH, Hardwick. This is Gar College Community Radio. Again, you're tuning to In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio. This week, we have another great show coming for you guys. We're going a little international. We got a couple guests coming in from Canada today. If you guys want to check out our social media pages, we're all over the place. You guys can keep up to date with everything that we're doing in the Weeds VT and Weed Talk Radio on Twitter. So you guys find us there. Right now we're going to do a little introduction. Brandon Barberio, we always have in from Phoenix, Arizona. Brandon, how you doing this morning?
I'm excellent. Thank you for asking, sir.
All right. How's the weather out there, buddy?
It's actually getting a little bit cooler, but of course all the snowbirds are back in town and, you know, everything's but in that perfect area of like a high of maybe 85 degrees and a low of, say, maybe 60 to 65 at night. So, yeah, we're happy.
Well, one of the biggest things we got to discuss this week, and it's the biggest thing going down in basically anybody's grow, right? It's the basically, it's time to take your crops down, right? So a lot of people are still pushing it. There's some people have gotten their crops down, and they're already harvesting them and drying them and hanging them. I see them all over the country. So we'll talk about that when we come back. But right now, guys, we're going to get to the Canna news, and we're going to be right back with Danyka and Timothy from... In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio, and this is your local and national Canna news for October 11th, 2019. Australian government invests in $3 million for medical cannabis studies. According to a Health Europa report, the Australian government is investing $3 million to study the benefits of medical cannabis for pain, symptom, and side effect management for cancer patients. The funds come from the Medical Research Future Fund. Hunt indicated that there are more than 11,000 registered medical cannabis patients in the country, a majority of which have been approved this year. The nation's first medical cannabis cultivation license was approved in March 2017. There are now 78 total licenses in Australia, the report says. Hunt credited Australian actress Olivia Newton-John with helping to shine a light on the benefits associated with medical cannabis. Newton-John, now 71, has been diagnosed with breast cancer 3 times since 1992. She told a crowd during a Melbourne annual wellness walk and research run on October 6th that she is feeling fantastic through a combination of cancer treatment and medical cannabis use. Recreational cannabis use still remains illegal throughout most of Australia. However, last month, the Australian Capital Territory approved reforms allowing residents 18 and older to grow 2 plants and possess up to 50 grams of cannabis. Hunt has said that the federal government does not support recreational cannabis legalization. Oklahoma approves of 200,000 medical cannabis applications. Oklahoma officials have approved medical cannabis applications for at least 200,000 patients, according to a KFOR report. It is an average of 3,500 approved applications per week since the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority began accepting applications last year. Under state law, patients must pay $100 to obtain a license once the application is approved. Last month, new rules for medical cannabis took effect in the state, including seed-to-sale tracking requirements, rules prohibiting physicians from making recommendations in a dispensary, preventing municipalities from barring medical cannabis businesses, and language explicitly allowing medical cannabis patients to possess firearms. The firearm provision was included due to federal law prohibiting those who buy firearms from using illegal drugs. a question asked on federal gun background check forms. The law also allows employers to consider a patient's status if they work in a safety-sensitive position such as firefighting, heavy machinery operation, or handling hazardous materials. The rules also require product testing. However, the state has yet to open up applications for testing laboratories. Last year, police in Adair County arrested a registered medical cannabis patient. According to a News 9 report, that charge was ultimately dismissed. The American Trucking Association proposes policies for legal cannabis. The American Trucking Association is endorsing policies to help the industry operate while states legalize cannabis for medical and recreational purposes. The trade association is calling on the government to continue allowing for cannabis testing for employees and roadside testing for drivers. In addition to lifting federal restrictions on cannabis research, the creation of a marijuana victims compensation fund. The ATA says that loosening federal restrictions on research would allow for studies that focus on the impact of cannabis-impaired driving. The compensation fund would be paid for by cannabis industry operators such as dispensaries, cultivators, and manufacturers. According to a Transport Topics study, the policies were developed by the ATA's Controlled Substances Driver Health and Wellness Subcommittee. The ATA has previously called on the government to allow alternative drug testing methods, back in the creation of a national database for positive alcohol and drug testing results, and strengthen anti-impaired driving laws. This policy allows us to, while recognizing that the modern world is changing, advocate for strong, safety-oriented policies backed by sound science and data, Spears said in a statement. According to the ATA, more than 93 million Americans live in a place with adult legal use cannabis. California's massive power shutoff is jeopardizing the state's cannabis industry. On Wednesday morning, PG&E, California's largest energy provider, shut off power throughout large sections of Northern California, leaving nearly 2 million people in the dark. The shutoff, which could last up to a week, is meant to prevent another devastating wildfire, but it will likely cause millions of dollars in damages, especially for the state's weed industry, which depends on electricity to cultivate and process their cannabis. Last January, PG&E filed for bankruptcy after it was sued for its role in a 2018 campfire. Authorities believe that the campfire started after strong winds blew over one of PG&E's power lines that ran through a forested area. The wildfire, which was the most destructive in California's history, cost the state $16.5 billion, killed 85 civilians, and practically wiped out the town of Paradise off the map. PG&E's decision to shut the power off to 34 of California's 58 counties came after news reports predicted heavy winds this week. The decision also came with plenty of controversy. Even Governor Gavin Newsom expressed his disappointment with the power company. They are bankrupt because of their terrible management. Going back decades, Governor Newsom said, according to the LA Times, it's time for them to do the right things, get out of bankruptcy, and get this system into the 21st century. Newsom has, however, expressed support for the company's Wednesday's shutoff, which he has stated is an unfortunate necessity given the current conditions. The power shutoff will affect roughly 1.8 million people living in Northern California. Without electricity, residents are scrambling to find ways to keep their food cold, maintain at-home medical care, and charge their mobile devices. The shutoff has also made it impossible to conduct business. It's affected schools and universities, all of which announced closures until the power is restored. Arguably, the cannabis industry is being hit the hardest by the power outage. In fact, this may be the worst time to be without electricity because October marks the start of a new harvest season, a time when mature plants are cut down, dried, and cured for processing. As of right now, thousands of licensed cannabis grows, manufacturing facilities, dispensaries, and retail stores in the area are without power needed to facilitate production. According to Leafly, thousands of newly licensed adult use and medical cannabis farms, distributors, and manufacturers are facing financial disaster due to the power shutoff. The shutoff includes large portions of the Emerald Triangle, a wooded region in Northern California where most of the state's cannabis is cultivated. Cannabis operations require electricity to power their fans, grow lights, water filtration devices, hydroponic or automatic watering systems, humidifiers, dehumidifiers, and air conditioning units. Cannabis is an incredibly fragile plant that is wholly dependent on environmental conditions to thrive. Even one day without power could generate crop-wrecking molds, comprise delicate curing conditions, or lead to other issues that could effectively wipe out an entire grow. Weed grows aren't the only portion of the industry that will be hit hard by the shutoff. Extraction facilities that separate cannabis oils from plant material for dabs and infusions require massive amounts of electricity as well. California's cannabis industry is estimated to sell $3 billion worth of products this year. Over 3,000 licensed farms in Northern California will produce the bulk of the state's cannabis that will be affected by this power shutoff. Schools across the country are installing vape detectors to sniff out students. According to reports from CNN and a number of local news stories from New Jersey, Massachusetts, Utah, and more, school districts across the nation are shelling out thousands of dollars to equip bathrooms and hallways with new-age smoke detectors that alert administrators. We are seeing an escalation in the number of vape cases, Adam Hagen, assistant principal at Wasatch High School in Utah, where vape detectors are recently installed, told the CBS affiliate KUTV. This was driven out by our parent groups coming to us wanting to do something. The Wasatch School District spent $40,000 to set up a district-wide vape detection system. At the high school where the assistant principal Hagen works, he says the bathroom vape incidents have reduced to zero since sensors were implemented. In the most drastic attempt to stop in-school vaping, a school in Lauderdale County, Alabama, announced last month that they had removed bathroom stall doors in an effort to push vapors out of hiding. But while that policy may have put a halt to vape plumes, it also caused a whole host of other privacy problems for a school full of pre-pubescent teens. Lung damage due to tainted vape consumption has already sent more than 1,000 Americans to the hospital and killed more than a dozen. In states like Oregon, Massachusetts, New York, Michigan, and others, legislatures and health officials have reacted by banning some or all vape products, typically flavored e-juice, but it is not yet clear if these actions will help curtail the issues or simply push more users to purchase potentially dangerous black market knockoffs. And that's it for your local and federal Canada news for October 11th, 2019. All right, guys, we are back. Lots of crazy news going on this week. So one of the biggest things, right, was the man, there's a lot of stuff going on. Australian government's investing money. Oklahoma's approved over 200,000 medical cannabis applications. The American Trucking Association is proposing policies for legalizing cannabis. The biggest thing was the power consumptions going on in California, where they're shutting down power to certain areas of the state because of the concerns for wildfires. So obviously, that not only the cannabis industry is being affected by that, but there's a lot of other industries as well. So hopefully they get these things figured out. Today's show, guys, we're very excited to announce that we have Danyka Dunseith from
Danyka,
I did it wrong again. So Danyka, I even wrote it down that way.
That's okay. Everybody does it. That's okay.
Yeah, it's the American in us, I guess. So Danyka,
you know, it's Canadian, it's global. Everybody doesn't do it.
Everywhere you go, right? Well, you're the owner and like the lead farmer for CannaCollective, right? And you're located in Canada. We also have Tim Harvey on from Lighthouse Genomics on as well. He's also based out of Canada, so it's really interesting to talk to both of you guys because obviously we have different industries and different laws and ways that our governments are approaching legalization. But what's really cool is that you guys have great stories, all right? So, Danyka, let's talk with you first. You have CannaCollective, right? You're not the typical person to start a collective like this, right?
No, it would not be what, if you asked me 5 years ago, I would not have assumed that this is what I was doing. But really quickly, while we're talking about all of our benchmarks and you guys in the U.S., we are coming across our almost 1 week now, Canada legalized federally. So we're very, very excited about that, and it's our 1 year anniversary. My background was actually public relations and communications. working out of the typical kind of background of that, I actually had the privilege of being director of marketing for a CBD company. And that is kind of where I landed into the cannabis sector. So it was very, very interesting. I saw a lot of different clientele. A lot of what sparked my interest wasn't the typical, millennial that obviously we're all interested in cannabis and the strains, and that's interesting. It was, the 75-year-olds that were like, hey, my doctor's prescribing CBD, but we legally can't do it at this moment. What do I need to know? So I got very, very fascinated about that. I'm a dog with a bone. So I moved forward, and in the last 2 years, decided to convert my family farm that was typically a cash crop. So we were doing corn, alfalfa, and soy, which was depleting the soil, which I wanted to know, why is it depleting the soil? Converted that into hemp. I started with 50 acres. Many other farmers told me, oh my gosh, you should start with one. Like I said, I threw caution to the wind and I started with 50. We yielded 93,000 kilograms of beautiful, beautiful biomass. And in the interim, our company traveled the world learning about what hemp is doing on an environmental global impact. So it was very, very cool.
That's it. That's amazing. Now, your whole farm is converted, correct?
Correct.
How hard of a transition was that to convert a whole farm? 'Cause, I mean, we're seeing a lot of people coming in, even in Vermont here, that are buying and resurrecting these dead farms or farms that have been out of business or, farms that were once something else. How much of an undertaking is that?
Oh my gosh, but by the way, I was researching Vermont. Don't sell Vermont short. You guys have really great soil, and it's very easy to, if you guys do it a couple tills, I think that you guys can grow great hemp. It's not necessarily difficult, but it's interesting in the sense that you have to learn about soil. You have to know exactly what you're dealing with. And when you're converting a cash crop, you have to know what you're growing. Mm-hmm. So it truly does take a village. And that's why I'm so grateful that Timothy is on the call, because his background is genomics. And that is something that is so important to know. And it's very, very cool to have everybody on board and understand what your soil is doing, what your plant is doing based on that soil. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily difficult, but it's tedious, and you have to be super committed.
Now,
if I can
hi,
pop
Tim.
in here. Hi. No, it's wonderful to be here as well. And I had the privilege of visiting Danyka's farm recently and seeing the work she's doing. And it's just a beautiful place. It's awe-inspiring just to walk through those fields, through the chest-high hemp, and just to breathe deeply in all those beautiful terpenes that we all love. And to see the way what she's doing with these plants. And she's doing a fabulous job. She's excellent soil. And whatever she's done, it's worked magic. But, like anything, it's kind of humbling to walk those fields too, because you realize what a high sort of magnitude endeavor it is to grow that crop and to get it in and everything involved. And so, I always enjoy talking to Danyka and learning about the research she's done and then planning and how you have to sort of, line up, the seeds at the start of the season, the buyers for the end of the season, and everything that goes into making sure that comes off successfully. I think she's a great resource to the community to be able to coach people through that too, as people make that transition.
Well, I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and for somebody who's never really been into the farming industry, I know it's a family farm, but like it wasn't something that you were doing full time and then decide to change over, correct? I mean, it's something you just kind of like decide to step into, take over, and then because your previous experience was in the PR industry.
Yes, sir. You know what? I always say it's not, you don't choose the plant chooses you. And as much as I was an advocate of marijuana, and I was definitely on that team, it wasn't something, that I had anticipated doing but it is a huge undertaking. And when I say it takes a village, I'm not joking. It truly takes a village. Tim and I had the pleasure of actually meeting at a conference that was put on by Circle of Growth based out of Muskoka. That's the first cannabis-related event that they've seen, and there was such an overwhelming interest, like genuine interest of, hey, I have 100 acres. What do we do here? How do we move forward? So it's kind of, the perfect storm where you have this educational platform connecting all of these people in local, areas that want to move forward. You have Lighthouse Genomics that are moving forward, doing the science behind it. And you have the local farmers. And quite frankly, a lot of people are looking at my little 100-acre small potatoes saying, hey, how are you doing this? What are you doing? So we were really creating a buzz, and it's a really amazing Canadian initiative that we're all taking. And as you know, and I know that you guys move differently because you are state to state. So we're federally regulated.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a different move for us. So everybody's kind of looking at Canada to say, hey, what are you doing? And this is what we're doing, and we're working collectively. Ooh, CannaCollective. But it is really a beautiful thing, and we need all of those people that are coming to the board. And as you mentioned, my background is public relations. And this is what I find so fascinating about the industry at this moment. After, legislation is shifting and legalization, that's great. Everybody's skills are transferable. So whether you work in real estate or whether you worked in public relations, for instance, your background is science, cannabis is creating an entire industry for everybody to have those skills transferable. So CannaCollective is very grateful to work with companies like Lighthouse and Circle of Growth, and we're excited to move forward.
Now, you brought up a great topic, and this is one thing I was going to get to a little bit later, but I'm going to ask you right now. You brought up the major differences between, the United States and Canada is that, you guys are federally legal, right? The government is pretty much in support and almost in control of your whole market, right? Where here, it's a little bit opposite, where the states are kind of going against the government at the moment. And hopefully we're waiting for federal, legalization here soon, or the end of this prohibition. How is it to be backed by the government? Like, how has it been to be able to do what you do? Is it pretty strict? How is it to work with the government on this project?
So I'm sure, from a science perspective, Tim can speak to that as well. But it's very regulated, and Health Canada, the way that I see it is that we created a beast in the best possible way. And as we move forward, we are truly paving the way as we go. So with Health Canada, it's very regulated. We have currently 52 cultivars that are approved. All 52 are borderline low on CBD. And that's kind of what everybody's looking to do. But in terms of U.S. versus Canada, what the biggest concern is the import-export regulations. Mm-hmm. So we had the privilege of touring 2 beautiful farms in Tennessee, and they are cultivating high CBD hemp. They are not able to work with Canada. Canada's not able to work with them. That's from a product, B2B perspective. In terms of science, I think we're still learning a lot, and I think that Tim can lend that as well.
Yeah, I'll comment and just that I guess Canada opened up, legal cannabis without, and a lot of the traditions of the Prohibition era came into the regulated industry, and so that was one of the impetuses. I was looking at the industry as we approached legalization and the way things worked, and realized that there really needed to be more of a scientific basis to the way things were done. Because, in the regulated industry, if you called your variety Purple Kush or Pink Kush or, whatever it may be, that was enough. That was fine. That satisfied your buyers. And but now we're in an era where people want to make sure they're getting the same medicine time after time, and that if they're buying something that it works really well for them. They want a repeatable experience, and we've also got we've got retailers who are used to maybe they're used to selling wine, and there's that trust that the consumer has in the authenticity of that product. They know that it came from a specific farm and that it's a specific varietal time after time after time. So my own history. And I've got to correct something. I'm surrounded by brilliant PhD geneticists, but I've hired them all on because my own history is actually in the arts and writing, but I was breeding cannabis for years and years, and working on my own varieties here, and seeing those go off into the supply chain with sort of a folklore attached, the story of the strain, and then I would see those stories, being almost verbatim on the website of a major licensed producer that was satisfying the medical and the early recreational community, and so I brought on this team, and essentially now we're allowing a system where people can have their varieties tested, because each plant has its own unique genome, and that unique genome has its own chemical medley, its own unique signature that works in ways that it'll be decades before science fully understands the way the entourage effect works. When all these there's hundreds of minor phytocannabinoids, and we're just getting a handle on what those are. There's still blips on the mass spectrometry readouts when we do chemical testing. We haven't really identified what all these compounds are. So the important thing, though, is that we have a genetic fingerprint of that variety, and we assign it a genetic identity that then works almost like a first name, with the last name being the strain name. So Blue Dream isn't just Blue Dream because there's thousands of different Blue Dreams. Every seed is a different Blue Dream, but there's it could be an alphanumeric, a given alphanumeric identity with a given QR code that takes you to its profile and its testing records, which then travels with that back. And so that's really what we're helping with. That's one aspect of what we do, but that's the one that really serves the consumer the most, because it lets them know what they're getting so they can find that same thing every time. And that's something that, back to the government, that the government had no idea that was even necessary. So the scientists are coming together in companies like ours, and we're saying, hey, here's a solution. Here, run with this.
Right, and you guys as far as Lighthouse Genomics offer some crazy stuff, right? I mean, whole genome sequencing for all your cannabis, right? Like you're saying, you really can find. So you can find literally what your strain is every time. So this helps your market, right? Is Canada using you guys at all to help mark or track these products that go out through their systems?
You bet, yeah, and that's starting. It's starting. There is a sort of a round table of geneticists, and we have our chief advisor on that round table, and they're advising the government. There's also retailers with a lot of clout who are saying, hey, we've sold pharmaceuticals in the past, and this kind of Wild West of product identification isn't going to fly with us, so we're going to use the Lighthouse services here, and so it's being kind of drawn into the system. But one of our big selling points is just saying to the producers, hey, you've got 40 varieties here that you're crossing and you're breeding with and you're marketing. Let's let's give you some really deep product knowledge on what the genetic basis for all these valuable traits are, and let's find out which of your varieties are actually really highly genetically novel. So we're able to help people screen their populations and find the gems that aren't sort of interchangeable with so much else that's on the marketplace, but that are unique and have values, that rare genetic characteristics. So we're able to work with the actual proprietors and give them a lot of strength to be competitive in the marketplace. That's one of sorry.
I was going to say, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but you guys also offer certificates on this, correct?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, that's Canada's an interesting situation. I think the intellectual property laws and laws are different in both countries. Because I've heard that in the United States, people are patenting strains and things like that, or individual genomes. In Canada, you can't do that unless you actually make a gene edit, then you can patent that. But there's a big concern about intellectual property, and people want, rightly so, people want to engage in the trade in genetic assets. They've got something great, they want to license it out, and now, so we're giving people the documentation to do that. We issue certificates based on their either their whole genome sequence or their genotype, which are the two services we offer. One's very quick and one's very thorough. But the point is, we're able to identify their genetics, attribute it to them, say, here's your certificate, now get out there and license it, or at least you've got something to reinforce any sort of claims you make towards IP, and also down the road, if you have an agreement in place and you want to test something down the road that's coming out of a different producer to see if what you've got credited to you can test it and see if it matches the identity on your certificate. But let me just go a step further and say that what we really think the world needs for the cannabis trade and genetic assets and for the cannabis industry in general is something like what exists for the copyrights protecting writing and the production of arts. There's something called the Berne Convention, where the minute you come up with a unique piece of writing or a song, it's immediately respected and protected by all signatory countries, and there's over 100 of them that you see this inside the jacket of books, about the mention of the Berne Convention, and that's because it's a unique copyright attributed to the creator. And we'd like to see that in cannabis, where the minute somebody pops a seed and does all the work of selecting the top seed and creating their clone line based on that they should be able to just go ahead and market that out and trade it and license it out to other producers, knowing that their copyright is protected.
I mean, that's a huge conversation to talk about is people's, genetics. People that claim that they've designed these genetics, that hold these genetics. I mean, we had a huge issue with the Phylos Galaxy, which we'll talk about. Right now, guys, we do have to take a quick break. We're going to go to our resident cannabis expert, our OLCC certified Brandon Barberio, with his strain of the week coming right now, guys. This week we have the Jedi Kush.
I'm Brandon Barberio, your cannabis expert for In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR. This week's strain of the week is the Jedi Kush. The Jedi Kush is a 100% indica strain. It's a potent cross in between the hugely popular Death Star and the San Fernando Valley OG Kush strains. This dank bud boasts into a THC level ranging up to 14%, and it does have an average of a CBD level ranging at about 2%, and it makes it ideal for medical use. The Jedi Kush comes in with a wonderful aroma that's pine and kind of like a hint of tobacco with a sour skunk. It's earthy, and it tastes sweet with an aftertaste that nullifies your exhale. The Jedi Kush buds are dark green, and they have a density shaped with deep purple and orange undertones with long, fiery orange hairs. These nugs are always caked with a layer of fine crystals. Users describe the Jedi Kush high as having almost an immediate onset of a dreamy, spacey euphoria that wraps your entire mind and encompasses a warm sensation that spreads throughout the body. And let's not forget the medical benefits that you will feel. Potent effects, it's a great medical strain for anxiety, arthritis, chronic pain, depression, fibromyalgia, insomnia, migraines, muscle spasms, PTSD, and stress. Once again, I'm Brandon Barberio, your cannabis expert for In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR.
All right, we are back. Another great strain of the week by Brandon Barberio. Jedi Kush, man. People love the Kush.
They do. I mean, it's always been a favorite, but then when you get breeding like that and you put a cool name on it like Jedi, everyone's like, yes, let's get in touch with the Force. Let's do it.
Oh my gosh, am I the worst person? I've genuinely never seen Star Wars.
No?
I genuinely am not.
Oh, no. Well, have you ever had the Jedi Kush before?
I don't think that I have. If I'm not watching the movie, I don't think I'm smoking the strain.
No, so, I mean, a lot of these strain names, and like, Tim was talking about it a little bit before, we see a lot in our industry, I'm sure you guys see a lot in the Canadian industry as well, where people just kind of like come up with a name, like, they don't know what the seed is, sometimes they forget about it, sometimes they mess up the names, and it just kind of goes to, I guess you could say, market with a name that's not correct, right?
Right.
I don't know how many times, especially recently.
You know what, though?
What's that?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. That's like companies like Lighthouse Genomics and Circle of Growth that are focused on education. Genomics is obviously focused on the genome mapping. That's why it's important, because people make up these names, and they're truly, like, these companies are bridging the gap between, hey, what are we growing, to what does this mean? So it's a really beautiful thing. Like, you can call it whatever you want, but like, what does it mean?
Right. Well, that's the thing. What is its real name? So, I mean, here we had a company, Phylos Galaxy, which is what I want to talk to Tim about, because I mean, you're offering, this marketability, the certification ability, stuff like that, which kind of falls in line with what Phylos Galaxy was doing. I'm sure you're aware of what happened in that situation. Now, obviously, we're trying to extend services to protect people's grows, their cultivars, what they kind of, these guys crossbred and who backbred and did all these great things too. How do we protect these people? That was, your biggest thing right before break was, this one question too. And we were talking about like the Berne Convention, and going down that road. What's the best way to protect people? Is what your service is offering right now the best possible way in our market as it stands now?
Well, okay, there's a lot of questions, a lot of topics you covered there. Let's just touch on Phylos for a second. With all due respect to their science, which I'm sure is really advanced and wonderful, and all that, it really hurt the cannabis genomics sector when they announced that they were going to do exactly what they said they would never do, and that was a tragic thing. And one thing that concerns me, and I realize they're saying this more for the biomass market, they've kind of backpedaled a bit on this statement, but they did say that, and they're bringing in people from Monsanto, and they're saying, hey, we're going to make all these varieties that are out there today obsolete. All these things people have worked so hard on, like your friend here online with his Jedi Kush, all that, they say, was going to be obsolete, and there's going to be the new strains of tomorrow, which are going to be brought to you by Phylos and developed by Phylos in-house by our Monsanto staff and our experts. And those will be, will make those other ones obsolete. So I looked at that, and I was just crying inside to hear that, because it's really the strength of the cannabis industry is its genetic diversity, and we don't want to whittle that away and end up like the banana, where we've got all these varieties which are where we can't just go back into that gene pool and sift out values and then learn more. And really, we don't know enough about what's in those genetics to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And Phylos maybe thinks they do. Maybe they know things we don't. But at the end of the day, this is a thriving, diverse industry. And diversity, we will always learn surprising things. We'll always have people stepping forward that we never knew were out there with these wonderful new strains. If you look at what Humboldt is doing with their breeders, with this freak show that's coming out, there's a couple of people breeding these amazing variegated leaves. And, there's so much that we don't know, so many surprises, and the diversity which sort of brings us to another quick topic here is that heterozygosity is the name for when you've got sort of variety within each, even one genome, even one seedling can have a high level of heterozygosity, which means it's got a lot of inherent diversity, and it makes a breeding partner that you can pull a lot out from. And certainly what Phylos is talking about would be to whittle that down and have really, really highly stable strains. And we need stability at traits of interest. But so one of the things we're allowing our clients to do is to look at their varieties and to see how much heterozygosity is in them. And if you backcross or have filial generations about 6 or 7 times, you generally get up above 90%, and that's considered a nice stable strain. And I think in the future we're going to see a movement towards more genome-wide heterozygosity, so a lot more instability in there, except stability at the traits of interest. And that way we've got more vigorous growing strains, we've got more natural resistances, and yet sort of more adaptability, more ways of expressing, because genes can sort of flick on and off and express themselves in response to different threats. So more of that potential while having stability at what we want, which is the terpene and cannabinoid synthase genes, maybe the structure and the leaf shape and all the things that make it kind of an identifiable variety. So science is a long way to go. And then in terms of protecting that, again, let's talk a bit about protecting the client. I think that's one thing that people felt that they had been violated in some way when Phylos made that pivot. They'd been sort of promised that their data wasn't going to be used, to make them obsolete, for example, or kind of sold to the highest bidder. And that's really something that we stand behind as a company. Look, we're not going to turn around and sell your data. We're going to use it. Yes, we're going to use it for research, because then we can serve our clients better. Our reports that we put out, because when you send us a sample, we generate a report, and we have our, we can talk about heterozygosity versus stability, your genetic uniqueness, your closest relatives, distant relatives, and we have a reference population that people can opt out of if they don't want to be visible, or they can, for a cheaper rate, they can appear in there, and it's a bit of extra PR. And there's different ways that we can work with each client, but one thing that's consistent is that we don't sell the data, and we really protect their interest, and because we're on the team, we're there. I come from the craft industry. My background is one of the breeders, and that's why this company exists, because I realize not only does the industry need a certain set of standards and the ability to conduct grade and to have consistency, but the breeders and the people producing these strains need insights or find it very interesting. And it's a pleasure to work with people and to show them, to basically let the plant tell its own story and to sort of help guide its forward evolution. And it's a lot of directions we could go with this, but it's a lot of fun. But really at the heart of this all is the companies in the space need to practice a lot of integrity so that they don't get labeled like 23andMe or like Phylos, who have done things that have, I guess, disappointed people.
Right. I mean, what's cool about what you guys are offering too is that, now it's the whole cannabis industry rise has been kind of unique, right? Like, it seems like every 5 years it changes a little bit within the industry, especially between prohibition and legalization, where, me and Brandon talk about this a lot too, where, up to the last few years, we've seen people just try to do every back cross this, cross that, throw crosses at everything to kind of make their own strain and put a stamp in the market, right? And now we're starting to see a lot of these guys going backwards, right? We're trying to find these landrace strains. We're trying to get back to what we consider the upper echelon, the pinnacle of, even like High Times, they're in their 70s, they're top 40 landrace strains, right? We're all trying to get back to that, find that, and grow that, right? Now, you guys, with what even you guys are offering, is the ability to really trace this down, right? I mean, it's even going to help these growers that are trying to back cross and find these strains to see where they're at, correct?
That's exactly it. And it's really incredible. And to your point, where everybody's like, ooh, it's sad, prohibition ended, great. What is super sad in Canada, we had a client that grew 500 acres. And came and said, hey, I have 500 acres. And we're like, great, let's see your Health Canada license. Not the case. The people are not understanding that, and people are really, truly running to the fence, not knowing what exactly is going on. So what's amazing about Lighthouse is that you need to know what your soil is doing, what it's producing, what you can grow, how that moves forward. So, yeah, we're really working hard over here in Canada.
One thing we did recently is we went out to Danyka's farm and took some samples because in order to sort of identify where, maybe it's a landrace or something that somebody's bred, where that falls into the population, we need a good reference population. And we had been getting signals that we thought were potentially derived from hemp ancestry. And we like to say, hey, your variety is 63.5% sort of what we equate with indica, and then we've got the narrow leaf drug types, which are more sativa, and which is interesting because each one of those, those tropical sativas might carry on great powdery mildew resistance, and then there's a lot we can learn from this breakdown. But we're getting this third group, and in order to really say with certainty that we could call that hemp ancestry, we went out to Danyka's farm and took a whole bunch of her finola, because finola is a great, real standard hemp variety, and so we now have those samples in the lab for whole genome sequencing, and which is the most comprehensive. It gets all 800 million base pairs of the cannabis genome sequenced at 15 times coverage to make it very precise and exact without a lot of errors. And that's going to be highly informative and will potentially cause a little shift in our whole reference population as everything kind of falls into its new place. And then the holy grail is to include a lot of these land races. And so I've had a friend just in South Africa. He got back last week and was picking up seeds where, he said they were from Swaziland and Lesotho and all these places. And so we're going to see if we're getting signals there that don't indicate 100 years of crossbreeding and hybridization, because there's a lot of mixed signals and reshuffling of the deck that you get every time you do a cross. But you're absolutely right that when you get one of these land races, you're seeing levels of genetic novelty and signs of sort of more stable evolution reaching farther back in time. And that's what we want to see. And then as we build out our data set with more of those, we'll be able to make more highly informed analyses of everything that comes into our system. So it's very exciting. And those land races, we're entering a point in history where there really needs to be a push to pull in samples and to protect seeds from those varieties as they are identified, because there's so much shuffling of the deck going on.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm jealous. I don't know about you, Joe, but I wish we had access to this type of information. I wish I could literally work with you guys in Canada to bring this information here so that we could utilize it now, because you guys are so far ahead of the mark as to anything that anybody's doing in the state.
Well, it's great about what Tim is saying here and what they're offering is I mean, obviously Canada is in a much more northern province than where we even are, right? So, I mean, here in Vermont, we have a lot of things that we deal with, like the molds, the mildews, you know what I mean? Some bug issues, and like... You guys just have
a smaller cycle, that's all.
Yeah. But you nail it right in the head. It's when you find the strains that are resistant to molds. You know what I mean? Some strains that are really prevalent to growing outside in our grow seasons, which wherever you may live. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, we have a shorter, less extended grow season in Vermont, New England than most people do around the world. You know what I mean? California, they have much different growth cycles and seasons than we do, but it seems like we are all in this issues where we're having molds, we're having obviously bug issues from wherever we're at. But Tim, the big question I have for you is, everything sounds amazing. How user friendly or how affordable is this for a small craft grower? Is this something that craft growers can be able to step into it and utilize at a fair price, or is it something that's really more designed for like the large multi-acre grows? Because I mean, like you said, I mean, we're seeing some issues where people are struggling with their hemp crops this year. Some people are getting their crops are turning male, and they're not only pollinizing their own crops, but especially with being in an outdoor situation, they could potentially pollinate a farm down the road, right? What options are there for the small farmers?
Oh, we absolutely love working with small farmers. We will do increasingly more consultation in the field. We're having discussions now with the group that's present in California. We've got good friends at True Breed Technologies in California, and they spend a lot of time boots on the ground in the fields. They also help with licensing and getting through some hurdles. We've got another group that we're talking to in Nevada, and the idea is to put our tools in the hands of these folks who are going out meeting the farmers and consulting with them. And then we can be flexible and sort of slide around a bit on our pricing, but the goal is always to find a strategy that makes sense in the context of what that particular farmer is doing, and then we can really target something that's going to get the most bang for their buck. And we're absolutely, we understand the economic realities and how there's people at all levels of this industry, and we're going to be as accommodating as we can based on how we can best help. And that's where that's where it really is great having one of our consultants on the field to take a look around and who really understands the many diverse ways that our science can be applied and how that's going to hit their targets. So we can create what's called a small assay that is if we were to genotype a few examples from the population that sort of encompass the real range of the spectrum of that particular farmer's population, then we can find out which genetic markers are really the critical important ones within that population, and we can make a targeted assay potentially with just a couple hundred or 100 what are called SNPs or nucleotide polymorphisms, and we're then able to really affordably do some of the large-scale screening where we're putting samples from hundreds of plants and helping with their breeding program to show how we can stabilize those varieties. Because when you're breeding, you've got what's called allelic frequencies, which some of them are quite common. Some alleles, which is the form, the state of a gene, maybe come up every so often, but sometimes maybe once in every 500, so it's quite rare. And when you're looking for a combination of 14 different alleles that you want to stabilize and have inherited in the same form from both parents, then your probabilities of getting that decline, right? Maybe that, okay, well, I need to plant 10,000 seeds or 1,000 or 500 in order to know that I'm going to at least once or twice get this combination, this precise genetic profile. It's a game of probability. So we're able to work with people. If there's a target, if there's something they want to produce, we can do breeding consultation and just shave years and years and years off doing this as compared to the old way, which is just to plant them and to keep a really sharp eye on things and to test them and to really be going from the phenotypic side, which is just looking at the traits. We're able to, if we can work with people to identify what they're going for at a genetic level, we can be really efficient. And all of a sudden, these small craft growers are competing with the big players of the industry. And that's why it's really exciting as we go into this era, and we can showcase exactly what these people have, and as the industry evolves, really allow them then to license into the larger industry, or just keep a hold of those genetics and be competitive and go up against the big players.
Yes, please.
I think that's what everybody.
Oh my gosh! Yes, right. Let that sink in for a moment.
I know. That was. Literally. A lot. This is what people want. You know what I mean? And I don't know where people are growing or what they're doing, but especially in Vermont. You know what I mean? We, especially if you're into your craft. You know what I mean? If you're into these craft cultivars that you guys are back crossing and going nuts with, this is a great way to put your stamp on it, right? This is a great way to figure out if what you're growing this whole time is what you think it is. You know what I mean? Right. This is a great way to add more selling points. Now, the thing I want to know about Canada right now is, Lighthouse is doing some amazing things, which, big shout out to you guys, Tim.
Thank you.
Because this is something that our industry definitely needs. And I think, like you hit the nail on the head. There's a lot of speculation going on right now after the whole Phylos Galaxy thing. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people out there that, this is their lives, their breeds, they feel like they've been kind of swindled and robbed. We'll see where this whole thing goes eventually with what they're trying to plan and what they're trying to do. And I agree with you as well. Like, to take away all these strains of what we're doing and trying to, just kind of push away everything we've done for many years and focus on a few main strains is kind of ridiculous to me, especially in the day and age of medicine, right? Because half these things now are being cross-produced and implemented for a certain type of medical help, right? We do our strain of the week every week to talk about these medical benefits. The benefits of Kush. You know what I mean? And then, when Brandon does it, typically he talks about the Kush strains and he talks about how the cross brings in whatever effect that has to whatever you need. Especially if you're doing a medicine. And, the things in Canada are going at a rate that we are blown away by here in the United States, right? We talked earlier about how crazy it is that we can't work together, right? How we have this border that just does not want to. We don't want to let you guys into our country. We don't want our country to let into your country. We don't want this whole cannabis thing copying each other, right? But up there, you guys have the cool thing with the government being in support. Now.
Together, everyone achieves more. That's the acronym TEAM for team. I love it that together, everyone achieves more, and we do. We need to achieve more together across that border. Absolutely.
I'm super on the team. But unfortunately, to your point, no, we're not able to import export. It is not. It's not a conducive result to what we're looking for at this moment.
No.
We have different soils, and you have different soils, and we have. We're really looking to do that. Tim is such an amazing, like his company Lighthouse, such an amazing bridge to the gap of understanding what exactly that it is that we're doing. Even hemp has been legal in Canada since 1998. We have totally been able to grow industrial hemp, which is currently what CannaCollective is doing. They're putting a halt on that because as much as our government is progressive, like Tim ran on this, we still did not know once we did that, we're still, so for instance, I think in the States, and there's certain states that you can source marijuana, and that's great. Otherwise, not so much. In Canada, it's government regulated. Everything is moldy. Maybe not so much anymore, because I truly hope that they got it together. This is why the black market is thriving. The black market is still thriving because the government said, hey, we're going to federally regulate this every single package. So whether you buy 1 gram or 3.5 or an ounce, whatever the case may be, you're still getting the same package. So this is why CannaCollective is super, very focused on having hemp bioplastics. Because if you're ordering the same amount, then let's make it environmentally friendly. Let's move forward with that. That's what Canada wants to do. But it's an interesting thing.
Now you're mainly growing for industrial hemp, correct?
Correct. So we're looking at the textiles, and that's why bioplastic very important. That's kind of what we're focusing on at the moment. Because Health Canada, as I mentioned, has 52 approved cultivars, none of which are yielding high CBD. So everybody that's looking to convert to CBD, they're not going to be able to. We simply do not have it available. And my company is really focused on the environmental hemp aspect. So there's a divide.
Right. I don't think a lot of people are really, I mean, the whole boom, at least here in America, I mean, like you're saying, it's been kind of something that's been going on in Canada for a little while as far as the hemp side of things goes. But everything's like the big CBD boom, and everybody's just kind of jumping on the hemp wagon for CBD right now, where, you know, we're talking a lot about the industrial aspect of it. Now, you know, here in America, we have very few industrial processing. Do you guys have industrial processing in Canada that you can rely on?
That's a very interesting question. We are actually, I'm seeing a huge shift. And the shift is from consumer demand, which is a really beautiful thing because now people are paying more attention to, hey, where am I buying this? Where is it coming from? That being said, we currently only have in Ontario alone only 3 approved LPs. None of which are focusing on pulp and paper, and none of which are focusing on wood. We're seeing a lot of focus in the U.S., which is interesting, but we still can't, work between one another. 2020, I'm hoping that it's going to shift. I know that Rockton specifically is looking to create the first processing facility in Ontario, so we're really gunning for it.
For fiber?
For fiber, paper, and CBD extraction. Because it's still in the flower, and it's especially depending on what you're planting. And Tim can speak to that. The amazing thing about the hemp plant is that it is all purposeful. So we can take the grain, we can take the flower, we can take the chaff, and we can take the CBD and extract it.
Right, so the whole plant can be used in multiple aspects and can be used in medicine as well for whole plant extractions, things like that, which, is one of the big things that we promote here. Entourage effects, whole plant extractions. You guys are hitting everything on the head here. We got to take a quick top of the hour break. You are listening to WGDR Plainfield, WGDH Hardwick. This is Gar College Community Radio. We're going to do our little call here, top of the hour. We're going to get Timothy Fair on from Vermont Cannabis Solutions. Don't go anywhere, guys.
You're listening to In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR 91.1 and WGDH 91.7.
Sometimes you catch that funky breeze in the weeds. Open up a honey, it's your lover boy, me that's knocking. Why don't you listen to me, sugar, all the cats at the high school rockin'? Honey, get your bopping shoes, for the jukebox blows the fuse. Hey, everybody hopping, everybody's bopping at the high school hop.
Oh, you can see the difference between a real cigarette and marijuana. And there'd be no mistaking the texture or contents if you were to handle them. The darker one has been rolled in wheat straw paper. In most of the reefers, a double thickness of paper is used. Now, in the language the addicts use among themselves, marijuana is referred to as Mary Jane, pot, weed, or tea. They never say to each other, let's smoke a marijuana cigarette. They say, let's turn on, or let's blast a joint.
Commissioner, don't you think that you're magnifying this issue?
A marijuana cigarette was found on the floor of one of your classrooms, and another was found in the girls' gym.
That's enough to start a big crusade in Santabello High?
Mr. Burroughs, please understand, Miss Williams, like many of us, believes in the progressive theory that there is no such thing as a bad boy or girl.
Well, there's a high school in Indiana. I don't know whether they followed your progressive theories or not. They had no problem 3 years ago. But out of a total enrollment of 1,200 students, 285 were found to be using marijuana or heroin. And this dreadful condition was only uncovered through a horrible accident. One student, desperate for money to pay for his habit, sold bennies for quarters and dimes to kids in elementary school. It was the death of a 13-year-old who had been addicted to marijuana and then to heroin that exposed the ugly facts. But by that time, it was too late for 41 teenagers who were addicted. It can happen here.
Open up a honey, it's your lover boy, me that's knocking. Why don't you listen to me, sugar, all the cats at the high school rockin'?
All right, guys, here's a little PSA from the 50s. There's a lot of stigmas out there surrounding cannabis, as we all know. And the hardest thing is to break these stigmas within any industry. I'm sure all of our guests know this today. Timothy Fair's on the line with Vermont Cannabis Solutions. He knows about the stigmas, especially from the law side. Timothy,
48 teenagers dead, huh, Joe?
oh, my God. Right?
I did. That was one of my favorites. How you doing today?
Well,
that was ridiculous.
Yeah, so we play a lot of PSAs here. Every show we try to play a PSA just to remind you guys of where we were not so long ago, and where we still kind of pretty much are in a lot of states and a lot of areas of the United States, and in the world globally. So there's a lot of stigmas out there, guys, which is why we are here to do what we do. Again, if you guys ever have any questions, any comments, or ever want to say hi to any of our guests, give us a call here in the studio, 802-454-7762. We're broadcast out of Vermont here in the United States. And right now we have our guests are from Canada. Now, this proposes some great questions for our friend Timothy Fair. Timothy, I don't know if you've been tuned in for the show or not. I know you're a busy guy, but we have bunch of great guests on today. Basically what we have is Timothy Harvey has Lighthouse Genomics in Canada, right? So he's offering some great things, right? Whole genome sequencing, SNP, genotyping, things like that. If we are an American consumer, can we send our products to in Canada?
Absolutely not. It's strange. I hate to have to say it, but it is kind of one of the nice bright line rules that we do have. And this is for both borders, both the Canadian authorities and the U.S. authorities. In fact, there was just an article this week coming out from a cannabis law attorney in Washington State talking about CBD. Even CBD is not permitted to cross the borders. No cannabis products whatsoever. And this can be really jarring for people. They were talking about Washington State, where you simply have a legal jurisdiction on one side of the border and a legal jurisdiction on the other side of the border. So common sense would say, sure, why not? Why can't we just go ahead and cross the border? But even CBD, any cannabis derivatives, no matter what they are, with the exception of maybe just like sterilized hemp seed, it needs a special permit from Health Canada to be able to be brought into the country. So that is something that people need to be aware of, and it could cause some real serious problems at the border, going either way, including potential bans from entering either Canada or the United States.
Yeah, I mean, what's unique about our guests is that obviously they're from Canada, right? Danyka has a great farm up there, the CannaCollective Incorporated. Yeah. Danyka, sorry. Danyka has a great farm up there.
I'm just going to keep correcting you until you get it right.
Right. No, that's fine. Please do. My mind's racing right now with so many different questions because, right now, here's one of our biggest conversations right now, right? Because we're starting to see a lot of Canadian companies to come into America and invest. We've seen it in New York now, right? Where they're investing into other businesses and stuff here, which really creates this weird dynamic because, as you were saying before, coming in and out and working relationships between businesses in the United States and Canada are very tough right now. And to stay within the law is even harder because even back, when all the legalization happened, we were putting, bans on people from even entering the country, correct?
That's correct.
And now obviously you guys are here and you're taking part in things all over our country, which is great because education and networking is what we need in this country. And you guys bring a very great process because you guys are doing it right now. And doing it with the government is obviously a unique thing. But the thing that we try to remind people is, especially with the interstate crossing with products, whether you're shipping it, mailing it, especially between Canada and America, those things still quite aren't legal yet. So let's not start shipping things all over the country or ordering off of Amazon because right now, like what Tim said, with this new news, what happens to places like Amazon? What's happening with these small businesses that are relying on these products to survive right now?
I think everybody is, it's a big different question between what's Amazon doing and what our local kind of startup mom and pop companies here in Vermont are doing, because those are two very, very, very different things. Helps when you're a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. But really, what anybody should be doing straight down the line in this industry is, consulting with somebody, whether it's ourselves at Vermont Cannabis Solutions or an attorney knowledgeable in the space, because there are so many regulations that need to be considered. When you're talking about domestic, we're looking at a patchwork of laws across this country right now. You've got 50 states, you've got 50 different kind of ideas about what is and what isn't legal when it comes to cannabis products. Now, this is starting to get a little bit more standardized and a little bit easier when it comes to hemp and hemp-derived cannabinoids like CBD. That, at least in the domestic side, is starting to become clearer. The 2018 Farm Bill was huge in, federally legalizing any cannabis containing less than 0.3% THC, and with a few exceptions, that is starting to become normalized. In the last year, we've seen the United States Post Office issue guidance on how to legally mail CBD products within the, continental United States, and that that is at least seeing some progress. When it comes to high THC, we still got a way to go there. Of course, the federal illegality really puts a stymie in that. But when we're talking about cross-border into Canada, that is challenging. Canada actually has significantly more strict regulations on CBD than it does on high THC now, following their national legalization last year, which is kind of got things on its head. But you're seeing that even in some U.S. jurisdictions like Massachusetts, where you can buy THC edibles, but yet now you cannot buy an edible with CBD. which just makes absolutely no sense. But there you go. Welcome to the space.
Right. I mean, we've seen that in a few different areas. It almost seems like that here in Vermont, where as if some of those legalization bills pass, it might be easier as a non-patient to get your cannabis, right?
Yeah, and this is we have a very unique issues with our medical program. We're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping that sometime in the near future, I think a major part of opening up access to the medical patients in the state are twofold, actually. One, the program needs to get out from under the Department of Public Safety. It's just been shown that they have no ability nor interest in properly developing this program. And number two, we need a place for patients to be able to consume their medicine. That's another major problem we're having in this state right now, is that any renter or any medical patient who is a renter who does not own their property often finds themselves in a very difficult position of being a registered patient, having access to cannabis, but not being able to actually consume their medicine anywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a third point here in Canada that, and I'm assuming this will be something that is potentially prevalent in the United States as well, is that doctors just aren't prescribing it. We've got about 2% of doctors are willing to prescribe cannabis right now, whereas something like 70% of patients coming in with pain are asking about cannabis. So there's a huge gap there, and that goes right back to that PSA that we played earlier. I mean, it's just it stems from that lack of information or misinformation or mistrust of cannabis.
Yeah, I think that
absolutely right about that. Absolutely right about that. Our medical professionals need to get up to speed here.
No, definitely. I mean, we talk about it a lot here, and like in Tim, and I'm sure you guys can all vouch for this. It's a lot of this is such new information for that industry, especially with like the endocannabinoid systems and cannabinoids and all these different things. This is all new language that this whole industry is actually. I mean, we knew about it 80 years ago, right? But we kind of wiped it out. We took it out of textbooks. So the last 80 years of anybody getting taught anything in the cannabis industry has not heard these words, right? Especially from the medical side. And now, without the federal, without being federally legal, there's no backing to these doctors going for any sort of education. There's no reason for them to be taught still. The federal government's still denying its purposes in essence, right? But, there's a lot of great nurses and doctors out there that are turned to, and they're realizing the biggest thing that happens is people see it work. You know what I mean? My big turn to this being a medically beneficial plant was seeing it work on a young girl that was basically in your deathbed. And we see it all the time with epilepsy and, especially when it comes to children and seeing children with cancers and how this product's, CBD, the plant, smoking, the different ways that it can work and help people is astronomical. And then now, we still so much to go. But anyways, we still have Tim here. Tim, one thing I want to talk to you about right now is a cool article I read earlier, and hopefully we see this a lot more. Is this something that could be good or bad for the industry? Unionizing, right? So there's people in Pennsylvania that are starting to unionize their medical cannabis companies. So their groups come together. Could this be good or could this be bad? Or is this something that we should be doing or have done already?
I'm a big union guy. I think that when workers come together, it gives them bargaining power against any kind of management structure who often has a power imbalance. So, as a general rule, I am a fan of unionization. I don't see why the cannabis industry should be any different than any other industry, especially with the amounts of money that we're seeing pour in and kind of the amount of corporatization of the industry that we're seeing. I think that, unions are definitely a great idea. But again, like anything, there's a chance for it to be taken advantage of. I grew up in Queens in New York City, so I've seen kind of a lot of the dark side of what can happen to unions when they're not, done properly. But, I think it's something that would be a good discussion topic. But personally, I don't see any drawbacks. If employees want to unionize, if they want to get together, be it, at the cultivation level, be it at the product manufacturing level, be it at the distribution level, I really don't see any drawbacks from that.
Right. No, definitely not.
Progress.
Right, it's definitely progress. The biggest thing, though, is we keep stepping back to the stigmas, right? I mean, I'm reading articles all over the news still about how people are getting busted with legal amounts of things. You know what I mean? This was a large bust, 900 pounds of weed, completely legal. What happens is, people still, we don't have any rights. So say in Vermont, you're a patient, you get busted with an ounce of weed on you. They take
you have to have a little more than an ounce to get busted, thankfully. We do, it's legal to carry up to an ounce here and 2 ounces for medical patients. But I understand what you're saying. If you had over your limit, for example.
Right. I mean, we're cautious to talk to people about, because, I mean, still we're seeing busts everywhere. And we talked about it last week, a little bit in the news. We didn't get to talk to you about it, but, this is for the third year we're seeing busts go up, correct?
That's absolutely right. In fact, Marijuana Policy Project just came out with their stats for 2018, and yes, arrests are going up, and that is kind of an issue. And that again, we could talk about why that's occurring. In my opinion, law enforcement cannot let this go, and that's combined with when you have legalization. And thankfully, ballot initiatives, you don't see this as much as you do with legislatively passed legalization, but you still do have it. When you legalize, there is always going to be compromises made. There's going to be compromises made in order to get your goal achieved. And too often with our legalization laws, as we're seeing this kind of liberalization and this legalization wave take over, kind of the dark side to that is that often it comes with increased criminal penalties. And we certainly saw that here in Vermont with the ratcheting up of the criminal penalties for falling outside of the legalization scheme. Basically, in layman's terms, to be able to say this easily is, okay, we'll legalize this A, B, and C, but if you do D, E, or F, you're going to get hammered hard. And that's the compromise that's been made in too many jurisdictions. And what you're seeing is law enforcement latch on to that D, E, and F. And if anyone even comes slightly outside, colors slightly outside of the lines, they come down with a hammer. Right. Which, it wasn't so much the case prior to legalization, but we are seeing that kind of line now become strictly enforced. And that does stem from the prohibitionists and from the law enforcement arm who just hate this. They hate legalized cannabis. You're taking away a revenue source from them. You're taking away a way for them to circumvent the Fourth Amendment when it comes to search and seizure issues. You're taking away the low-hanging fruit. You're taking away the safe, easy way to pad their numbers. It has nothing to do with public health or concern about people's welfare. It has all to do with the bottom line of the law enforcement industrial complex.
I'd take it a step further and say it's actually harming public health because
I agree wholeheartedly. Look at the vape crisis that we're having. We're going to ban vapes and push people back to the black market where there's an unregulated project that is actually doing harm. No, I agree with you 100% on that.
I had a great question I wanted to bring up while I had both of you guys on the air and everybody's still on the air. Was two things. One was the roadside testing, which in Canada they tried to do the Draeger 5000, right? They actually do have roadside testing, correct, guys?
So let me ask how well that's working for those guys.
yeah, I've yet to be pulled over, but holy smokes, no, there's no link between your psychoactive state and your blood cannabis levels. There's one saying how much is in your blood, so maybe you smoked all last week. Maybe you've been hitting the vape the day before, but it doesn't have any link to psychoactivity, and then of course different people who handle that in a different way. So it's this arbitrary, a highly arbitrary system. The person I was speaking to our colleague Philippe Henry the other day, who'd had a conversation with the person who developed this technology that's in use, and that person had never smoked pot in their lives. So that's the level of insight going into this, and it's a complete.
No, it's been amazing to see what they're bringing forth for roadside testing. Last week I read an article about this whole VR headset where they actually test your retinol, and that can tell you where your state of highness is, and that's something that they're going to try implementing here soon in a couple of these states. So, there's a lot of amazing things going on like that. But you know what I mean? Like, you guys have been legal now for a year, which is what we're just talking about, correct? Pretty much right then and there. So, and we don't hear about these dramatic, roadside incidences where people are crashing, dying, where it's become a major issue in Canada, right? Where a lot of the states in America here are that's our hinge right now. In Vermont, the big hinge is the roadside testing, right? How do we make sure our streets are safe and no one's crashing into buildings and things like that, right? So that was one of the biggest questions. The other one was, we brought this up last week. We had Dr. Mary on, and we were talking about the vape crisis. And Brandon brought up this issue. I think it was Brandon who was like, "Why does it seem to be only in America? Why do we not see this epidemic in Canada?"
I read the article. You know what I'm saying? We have all these crises in the United States with vape carts. Okay, 1,000 people dead, and or injured and sick, but there's not one record case of this in Canada at all.
Well, now, guys, for you guys being in Canada, have there been any issues like we're seeing in America and Canada right now?
I don't know if anyone else is aware, but all the media reports have been coming out of the States from what I've seen. So, don't really believe so, but I think one of the big issues here is, and this is a really serious issue, is that we've got something like 90% of the nicotine vaporizers are being consumed by kids in high school. Mm. So, and that's chronic use, and there's all sorts of chemicals and whatnot that they're consuming on every half hour. So, that's unfortunate. But you can actually load your vape cartridge with coconut oil, MCT oil, and there's different. There's probably I just think always more scientific research into where the harms are coming from, and looking at that. But don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, because it is a great delivery mechanism in a lot of cases. And I can't say there's scientific proof saying it's 100% safe, but I'd like to see that science done. And certainly people aren't going to stop vaping, so let's not illegalize it, because then the science won't get done, and we won't learn what the safe methods are.
Right. I mean, we talk about these bans that are going on in these states, and like Tim brought up earlier, Tim Fair was. I mean, all these vaping ban does is push everybody to another market, right? Like, people aren't just going to be like, "Oh I'm going to stop," right? The thing is, people still compare it to cigarettes. We got people dying by the hour by cigarettes. And where's the attention to a ban there? Not to take anything away from the vaping issue, but there's much bigger health issues going on in the country that we really should put this focus on. You know what I mean? Imagine if we put this focus on the tobacco industry, what we might find out with all this testing and studying that we've been doing for the vape cart industry. Not to say that we don't want to protect people within our industry, but I think, I agree with you guys. I don't think it's these qualities of oils and stuff, because this has been going around for a while now, right? It's not like it's something that we just started doing 6 months ago and everyone's like, "Oh, wow, cannabis oil." You know what I mean? It's been something that's been around for a while. We've been doing it for a while. Even vaping's been around for a while. And we've seen our fair share in the tobacco side where they had the glycols. When, we were talking about it last week, when they banned glycols in cigarettes, where did that market go? It went to the cannabis market for a while, right? And then we all got smart about glycols, and we started looking for carts without them. But now, with the black market, like Tim says, if we're gonna make this illegal or ban something that people are doing well in some places, the only thing you're going to do is push them to the same market that you're literally trying to save them from, right? Because the black market doesn't care, right? It's there, right? That was the thing, though, because we haven't heard about anything in Canada. I mean, we look, we listen, we look, we don't hear this being a global epidemic at the moment. It seems to be like a U.S. thing, and maybe it's just because of the way our news reports it. But
no, Joe, if I can jump in, this is that's exactly proof to show this is not about THC or vaping. If that was the case, we would have seen this when vaping onset years ago. This is about adulterants. This is about people adding in, whether it's vitamin E acetate, whether it's other chemicals that are used to, create a thicker, better-looking product. This is adulterants. Whether it's adulterants from cheap cartridges being imported from China, where the metals inside are leaching into the vapes, mercury, lead. We could. There's a lot of reasons or ways this could be. The one thing I think that the fact that there hasn't been the outbreak in Canada or anywhere else shows you is that it's not about vaping. It's not about THC. It's about the crap that people are putting in, the greedy people are putting in. And that comes back to a lack of regulation. Vapes are also regulated much heavier in Canada than they are in the United States, which virtually zero oversight, zero consumer protection.
Yeah.
And that's why they're not having problems.
Hey, go figure.
Well, it's interesting because we talk a lot about regulations. We talk about a lot about certifications. We talk a lot about how do we test and what tests are we looking for? You know what I mean? Because you can test all day long for THC. That isn't going to tell you about the metals or the pesticides that are in your product. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a safe product. It just means that you have a product with a certain THC level within it, right? And our market, unfortunately, is driven to that. Hey, how much is that THC percentage? And we love to see those carts there where it's like 80 to 90% THC. But you said it's tested, right? You know what I mean? Or it's like the pre-printed boxes, or just these Amazon controlled boxes. Now, like Tim said, is this more of a scare tactic because of it being a hot button issue in America? You know what I mean? There's a lot of reports out there that these are just scare tactics. You know what I mean? People are just putting these out to get people away from a market that they don't see a way to control it at the moment.
I mean, there's a big push for no legalization campaigns against these type of things. I think you're onto something. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, there have been deaths. There have been, 18 at this point. At least that's what's being reported, and thousands of injuries. I don't deny there's a problem. I don't think this is a completely made-up issue. I think there is an issue. But there always is going to be an issue when you have an unregulated product that people want. Look at alcohol, right after Prohibition with bootleg gin. And I've been reading, not so much a problem in the United States because of the way we regulate alcohol, but you get outside of the U.S., places like India and Bangladesh and East Africa, where you have people dying from methanol poisoning from unregulated alcohol. That's, bootleg booze that's made cheap. And it's the exact same parallel here with vapes. When you get bootleg cheap things being made and people who put greed ahead of safety, there are going to be problems. And that's, I think, what we're seeing here is, greed over common sense, greed over empathy, greed over what's this product going to do to people. And that is what you're going to have flourish in an unregulated system. If there's anything that should be taken away from this, what we've been seeing in the medical issues we've been seeing, is the absolute need for a taxed and regulated system across this country for cannabis and cannabis products.
Right. And I mean, in Canada has a great example of what could happen with it. I mean, not every system is perfect, right? And we're just going to take years for any system to get there. But what they're doing has been great. Their government is involved. It's, government-run kind of a system in Canada where it's very different than the American system right now, where it's pretty much state-run, right? But, testing, marketing, it's even got to the point where Canada's actually pulled back products, right, because of mold and contaminants, where they actually had recalls on products. Like, that's nothing we've ever seen in this country, right?
I mean, it's not really widely reported on. I mean, I've seen it in Oregon through OLCC and everything like that, where test results will come back. There will be a 100-acre outdoor harvest for the season up in Eugene, and they literally lost 25 acres due to mold, but it's not usually widely reported. Right. So.
No, it's definitely not. So, I mean, one of the things that, a listener had wrote in today, Canada Organics, they're saying, there's been over 1 million heart-related deaths and over 1 million cancer-related deaths in the U.S. every year, but no one's talking much about those real causes. Where is the focus going right now? It was basically their questions, right? Again, that's why we say, is it just a hot button because of the topic that it is? I mean, we're talking about how many deaths happen every minute from tobacco.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And I think it is, I think there's a really good argument on both sides. But I also agree with Tim. Put a regulatory system in place and it all goes away. Everything just disappears because the testing will literally find all the bad elements. They'll be removed. People won't be able to get those products. I'm really a big fan of cannabis in Canada and what they're doing federally. I mean, it's not a perfect model, but once again, I'll go back to Tim again. It might not be the perfect model, but at least they have it. They could always fix it. It could always be, something could always be changed. You know what I mean? that's really the way to do it.
Yeah, well, talking to our guest today, it seems like, working with the government's been nothing but positive for them at this point, correct?
There's a lot of, I guess, just to have it back to Danyka, she's working with them on the hemp front, but there's a lot of advances that we can make. There's, for example, with this list of approved cultivars, the U.S. is, in a sense, way ahead of us because people can plant and grow as hemp just about anything that falls under a certain line for THC, whereas for us to do that, we need to spend several years proving it out and proving that we can have a consistent consistent low yield of THC, and so it takes several years to get a new variety into the system. Whereas, we could really just do a few runs of genotyping and demonstrate the stability very quickly if we use different technologies. But it's just the system was devised in the 90s when these technologies weren't as accessible. So we're being held up from progress because the systems of approvals aren't where they should be, and so in some ways the United States is getting ahead of us. But I think these are things that will come around over time, and by and large, there's a massive explosion of research being done. There's whole departments focusing. There's University of Guelph, which is an agricultural university. They've got a heavy focus on cannabis botany and testing. You bringing all sorts of different sciences into that. And whereas in the States, I've had a recent conference put on by Genome BC, and a presenter got up and they had done a study on the cannabis used for cannabis research in the United States, and it was coming out of Mississippi, and it was basically swaggy ditchweed. It looked like the bottom of a bag. It didn't look like marijuana, and that was the only approved source for the last several decades for cannabis research in the United States. So the results are absolutely skewed, and there's not a lot of scientific understanding. So what I really hope to see happen, which will uplift the whole industry, is for that to change. And if a federally regulated system comes into place, then certainly it will create this explosion of research that we've seen in Canada, and that'll just sort of that'll be the high tide that lifts all ships.
Right. I mean, we're seeing a lot of these American companies go to Canada because of the ease of research right now.
Yeah.
Right. And what we like to see is the government putting money behind research. We just talked today about how Australia is putting $3 million behind research. You know what I mean? Canada puts invests a lot of money into their research. And something happens, they take care of it. There seems to be an issue. A lot of people, it seems like it gets taken care of. Anytime we see an issue, it seems like it gets taken care of. Here in the States, it's a little bit different. Like we said, it's all state run. Anyways, guys, I got to take a quick break. We're just going to do a quick drop here. You were listening to WGDR Plainfield, WGH Hardwick. This is 91.1 FM and 91.7 FM. Gar College Community Radio. You guys can live stream us at www.wgdr.org. And also, guys, if you haven't heard, Stone Age Magazine is now going to be live streaming our show as well. So if you guys want to check them out, check out their awesome website, their awesome content. They got a great magazine that's hitting the shelves right now. Episode number 3. We have stacks of 100 of them, so if you guys want any sort of copies, give us a call, 802-454-7762, or reach out to us on social media, In the Weeds group page on Facebook. We also have In the Weeds VT on Instagram and We Talk Radio on Twitter. Go follow us, find us, and keep in touch with us, as well as Timothy Harvey. Now, Danyka, if you guys want to, and you can, let's recap of where people can reach out to you guys.
I don't know if we've got Danyka right now. She didn't speak up there, but so people can find Lighthouse Genomics at lighthousegenomics.com. We're also on Instagram at Lighthouse Genomics, and we love hearing from people. And earlier on you asked about access to us in the United States, and although it's true that people have been shipping DNA, which is a cannabis extract in a sense, all across borders for the last decade without any issues. We are affiliating with groups in the United States, state by state right now, in order to be able to serve U.S. clients. So we're working on a partnership with Digipath Labs, which are currently active in Nevada and I believe Colorado. We've got California. Will be very closely aligned with True Breed Technologies, and we're looking for more partnerships like that so that we can help people out right across the country.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Guys, check out their website. They do have a great website, lighthousegenomics.com. Like you said, all
Danyka.
sorts of interesting stuff. Is Danyka here?
Thank you so much. Yeah, she's not, but she's at CannaCollective Inc.
Yep.
And she, like I said before, she's an amazing resource with her team for people getting into the industry. So any Canadians listening, if you want to convert your farm over, reach out to Danyka, and she can help you there. And then I'm sure there's similar folks in the United States, state by state, because that's just how it goes down there, right?
Yes. No, she's doing wonderful things, guys. And like you said, they're always up for education. They're there as a collaborative. So if you guys have any questions, concerns, comments about what she's doing up there, she's an amazing wealth of information. And she's going everywhere, man. So she's out there. She's advocating. She's accessible. And she wants to talk to you guys. So, give them a like. Go check them out. CannaCollective Incorporated. They are on Facebook. They are on Instagram. They also, again, have a website as well. So make sure you support them as well. The whole hemp industry is blowing up, which, I'm glad we touched base on a lot of this stuff, because what she's doing is a little bit different than the norm. She's not just growing straight for CBD. Her focus is in the industrial sector of hemp processing in the industry, which a lot of people don't realize. Even paper, you know what I mean? We can make paper. Hemp cycles grow, every 3 to 4 or 5 months before we can process, where trees take years, guys, years. So the wealth of knowledge and what we can do and obtain with just industrial hemp, and then also as a medicine, is fantastic. Again, we just want to have you guys check them out, CannaCollective Incorporated. Helen Brown, guys, also works with Danyka. So if you guys know Helen, we've had her on the show before as well. Ellen, yes.
Yes. She's a great resource as well. I think she's out of Michigan, or is that Boston? She's out of Boston.
Yeah, she's Mass, Maine area. We've had her on the show before, right when she just made the venture to go over there, Sensimelia seminars and stuff like that is what she's really well known for. And again, it's amazing to see the women in the industry step up to the plate and crush home runs, you know what I mean? They're very inspirational. It just goes to show to everybody that you don't have to be in this industry for your whole life. You don't have to be a farmer. Danyka did it. She came out of the PR industry recently, the last few years, and took over a family farm and has really done well. The big thing that we always want to talk to everybody about is especially right now in this season, because it's harvest season, right? So she's just harvesting. All these big farms are harvesting. It's that time of year. When do you know it's time to harvest? How do you harvest? When should you chop those plants? Especially in New England right now with the weather that we have. These are the big questions that are out there, and then the frost cycles and how that works. Tim, do you have anything for people to understand about processing or harvesting their plants?
That gets a little outside of my realm of expertise. I wish I had a little more hand in the dirt experience, but that I would pass over to someone like Brandon, who has a lot more experience than I do.
we also have two Tims on the phone right now, so I guess that's where we get confused. So we have Tim Harvey, who's also on the phone from Lighthouse. I mean, so Tim's working a lot with these farms right now. So and working with their genetics and things like that. This is where it gets really fun and interesting for you, right? Because you're striving to find that good genetic, right?
Absolutely, and each genome is unique, and it has its own metabolomic cycle. So it's different expressions of different biochemicals come out at different points in the maturity cycle. So really, depending on what you're targeting, you could harvest at a different stage. But one's local conditions and when that frost comes and when those temperatures drop, which can allow botrytis to really gain a foothold. You want to keep those molds off. So taking it, being on the safe side is always a real advantage there. But really understanding, doing testing as you go. Now there's handheld testing units coming out that hook up to your iPhone, where you can actually shine a light through a bud and get an estimate of your production of cannabinoids. So there's a company called Vessel in Canada, VSSL. They're actually present in the States as well. I just had one demo to me, and so getting farmers in the field with these handheld devices able to monitor their cannabinoid yield is going to be really helpful for them to determine that time. when I think back, I cycled through. I used to be a global cyclist. I spent about 2.5 years on my bicycle going around the planet, and I was actually coming up through California and Oregon right in the harvest season. At this time of year, I got back, and so early October, and I had people handing me the most generous, open-hearted people. Oddly enough, it was as I was going down the highway, approaching straight lines and state lines. So in retrospect, they didn't want to leave Humboldt County with their bag of weed, but they were handing me these gifts of freshly cured cannabis, and that was what really opened my eyes to how important this industry was to the folks down there, and how the community just lit up at harvest time and worked together to bring in these harvests. I had some great conversations, and it really, as I was cycling and the weather was turning and the snow line was creeping down, I was just kind of almost getting sick. And at the end of a 12-hour day on the bicycle, I'd stop around dinner time and have a puff. And I would find myself at the handlebar, standing up, pedaling hard in the zone, just putting the kilometers behind me as the sun set, thinking, wow, this is a real medicine that works on all levels, activates, inspires, makes those aches and pains go away. And to this day, I don't know what strain it was that I was smoking, but the entourage effect was just extreme. And that's really one of the things that got me into this. I came back then in 2007 to Canada and started growing right away, and sort of got on a breeding regime, which I carried me through right until 2017, when I founded Lighthouse Genomics and brought some brilliant scientists into the fold. So I've got a lot of, it was being in that harvest season in Humboldt County that really opened my eyes. So I have a lot of gratitude to the people down there.
It's amazing how this industry brings people together. It's like musically, smells, bike rides. It's just an amazing industry. Yeah. Now, Tim, I don't think we get to touch base about how you got into this industry, where cannabis kind of started to affect you in your life.
That's the other Tim Fair?
Oh, no, for Tim Harvey.
Okay. Well, I mean, it was really, I'm from British Columbia. I'm to the West Coast, which is a real hotbed for genetic diversity. I'm always telling people it's kind of like, probably California, it's right the whole West Coast of North America. It's a bit like the Amazon rainforest is, and now we're seeing this, the regulated industry really wanting to draw from that in the genetic diversity and the genetic assets we have. But I grew up in that environment, and there was a lot of folks growing. So right back in high school, I put my first plants in the ground, and then had my aunt come and pour Drano on them because it's evil weed. But it was really, as I then started taxing my body on my global adventure around the world. It was a trip by zero emissions, and I, when I was in Morocco, I was coming off the water after being out in a storm in a rowboat with a fellow. We rowed from Portugal eventually to the Canary Islands, and I sailed from there. But I can't really express the pain I was in, because we'd been in a storm, dipping the oars, pulling together for 19 hours straight. Came ashore with my hands bleeding, my feet bleeding from the foot straps. Every joint in my body had been pulled and strained and was aching. And I was, first went to the bathhouse, the hammam, and had a massage and stretched out, and then was treated to some fine Moroccan hash. And was given some to take out into international waters after that, and I was able to kind of nibble on that as we went. And the profound impact on my physical sense of well-being and the ability to withstand those strains was like night and day. So that my appreciation for cannabis really heavily stems back to that global adventure. And then so coming back, it became not something I looked at this industry around me, and it was all black market, then people growing in the forest and in their basements. I looked at that in a new way, and I really understood that that there was a lot more to understand about how these different varieties really helped people. And the work done by these people growing in their basements. One thing people don't realize is that, or think about often perhaps, is that when you take a crop out of the outdoors, when it's got one breeding cycle per year, and you take it into the indoors where you can have 5 different harvests, you're accelerating the evolution of the species. And the amount of genetic diversity that you see right up the coast, and a lot of draft dodgers came to Canada in the 1970s and transplanted that culture. So that's really where Lighthouse comes from. It comes out of like a celebration of genetic diversity, wanting to document the genetic basis for all of these fabulous traits. And so working with the growers, working with this community, and empowering people now that there is this shift where where the big companies are kind of extracting a lot of the value, and as Tim Fair mentioned earlier, then saying, but what you're doing is illegal. We're looking to bring the power back to the craft community and give the craft community access to science and the ability to document their assets and to understand their assets and to employ the sort of science that until recently has just been the sort of exclusive domain of the big giants in the industry.
Which is amazing. Now, can you guys test a seed, or does it have to be a certain age before you can test it?
You could do a little core sample where you drill a little bit out, and then you still got a viable seed. But you're dealing with, it's much easier to take a leaf, or in some cases, just for the sake of all the regulation, we take a bit of stalk or the leaf stem because it's classed as hemp. So we're able to anybody can give us a sample, regardless of their license type. But the seeds are a bit more difficult, really. So we haven't done it, but I've heard that it can be done. Now, but certainly you don't need to grow a plant to maturity, and you can do a test and you can find out, hey, this has what I want. I know it's sex, and I know it's genetic markers, so we are going to keep this one. But then these 10 maybe aren't worth that massive investment in growing out flowering just to find out what we can find out through genetic testing.
Right. Now, can you guys also do sex testing as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we haven't. There's a lot that we need to put up on our website. We made a lot of advances since our last big update, and so, but that's something that is fairly readily. It's not something that we can determine absolutely.
Right, because I mean that's also going to be a big important thing for the industry, especially when you're growing these huge crops, right? Because all you need is one plant and can mess up the whole entire thing. Correct?
Exactly.
Yes, and so. There is something that the industry hasn't determined yet, which is how to produce seeds. Because we know there's feminized seeds. You use the STS or this colloidal silver, and you create your feminized seeds. But there is a small failure rate there where you're getting, if it's 99%, you got one male, like you say, it can wreck a crop. So there is a bit of a race on, and we're not part of this at this point, but to among researchers to determine the determinants of sex. That if a certain gene edit were made, that all the offspring would be female and it would be infallible. And that's the sort of thing that when somebody nails that, it's going to be a sort of a $50 million discovery, and there's going to be a lot of patents and whatnot involved. But that would that's another aspect of where genetic understanding can go. Is it can be used in what we've got this new CRISPR technology that's a lot more targeted than the old ways of doing. Just kind of mashing together foreign genes into a new gene, and then things would escape into nature. Now we can do things where there are edits made very precisely so that they either may or may not be passed down through subsequent generations, so it can be controlled and it can be done safely so that things don't just escape into the wild. And so this is a rapidly kind of evolving area in science, and there's big dollar figures attached, but it's something that we're going to see playing a sort of an increasing role in cannabis going forward. Currently, our approach at Lighthouse is just to really it's to give people more tools to do the traditional kind of breeding and insight and oversight to the traditional kinds of breeding, which is essentially just the where it's all selection based instead of gene editing.
Mm-hmm. Now, with you guys,
awesome,
right? Now, I mean, I wish we had we're in a different era again, because unfortunately, our American listeners cannot have access to this, right? Because we cannot cross federal lines. I mean, most people know how to work away around it, but as far as that goes, it's really hard to do that crossing federal lines. There's multiple companies in America trying to do the same things. We had the Philo Galaxy issue, which everybody talks about. Everybody knows what was going on. Great idea. Great thought process in the beginning of it, but then obviously kind of sold out to the highest bidder. Which now we haven't seen the ripple effect of that yet, but we all kind of know it's coming. You know what I mean? They've been putting releases out saying that they're going to start producing these strains that they have in their galaxy that other people technically own. The greatest thing about the Lighthouse thing, guys, is you can get certified. They can do multiple different amplitudes of testing for you, and they're even willing to come down to your farm, man. We talk about certifications, regulations, get people in to certify you clean, green, make sure you're a clean farm and do things properly. In Canada, there's all sorts of restrictions. We were talking to Timothy Fair about that earlier, about how different the restriction systems are. And then, unfortunately, it's state by state here in America. Canadian is run by the government. Which, I believe it's a good thing. I mean, we're not seeing huge market fluxes as far as companies are going on Wall Street, because now it's like, the big issue last week was, especially after the MedMen pulled out of their big acquisition of Canna Farms there, there is the market going to stay high? Is this the bubble that we've seen coming? Is it going to crash? Canada right now, you're a year into it. The market seems to be as strong as it ever has been, correct?
No. We've had a 6-month slide, so there's a lot of companies getting kind of pushed out and really struggling. A lot of companies that went on the public market. So the ones operating at the highest level will survive this, but there's been about a 60% decrease on average in the market cap of any publicly traded company in the cannabis sector over the last 6 months. So it's tough times, but everybody predicted this, right? And there's predictions that, well, if it were to, maybe the edibles are becoming legal on the 1 year anniversary, so next week on the 17th, we're going to see that as kind of legalization 2.0. That might cause a bit of a lift, but then the next big kind of lift is anticipated to be the U.S. election. Maybe there'll be talk of federal legalization or some sort of advances there. Really, we're a private company, so we're not as affected. But a lot of what we want to achieve would be, we want to have an army of people going out to farms and really just interacting and empowering. We're all about empowering our clients and getting out into the community. But that would be, if we're just growing organically based on revenues, that's a slower process. So it would be great to receive a big cash injection, but so we are in that way affected by the markets because there's a lot less ready money right now in Canada. But that said, I think these things travel cyclically, and then we'll see things come around. And the focus just has to be on having the right intentions and being smart in business and in order to get through these times and to be one of those companies that rises to the top. And that's actually, one of our value propositions to our clients is like, look, times are tough. We're able to give you insights into your genetic assets so that you can make strategic business decisions and have a competitive advantage because, it's increasingly competitive and the emotions and the sentiments and the mass psychology surrounding it is in a big F right now.
Yeah, it's amazing what's this whole industry's up and down. But like you said, it's amazing how the industry is getting reported on. You know what I mean? Like what you're hearing in Canada from U.S. markets, what we hear in the U.S. from Canadian markets. You know what I mean? And what's really going on? We start to see a lot of these. We start to see a lot of issues kind of falling apart, deals going awry. Now that the honeymoon's over, we call it. All right, guys, we gotta wrap it up here in the next couple minutes. We have Thomas Marcombe of Vermont Grow Coaching coming up again with his newest Grow Tip segment, so you're not going to want to miss that. A huge thank you to Danyka Dunseith, CannaCollective Incorporated out of Strafford, right, Canada?
She's out of Stratford, yep. It's actually in the small town of Shakespeare, Ontario.
So she's got a beautiful farm going on up there, guys. Reach out to her, find her on Facebook, show her some love. Also, we have Timothy Harvey on from Lighthouse Genomics, who's also on social media, guys. Check out their websites as well. Huge thank you, guys, for coming on today. We appreciate everything that you're doing for the industry. Timothy, hopefully we can talk again about Lighthouse Genomics, because I'd love to talk to you a little bit more in depth about this kind of stuff. And again, thank you guys for taking your time for coming on today. Next week, guys, we have it was been an awesome show. Next week, guys, we have an ex-Playboy model who got a brain tumor coming in. So we do have Carrie Parker coming in. She's going to be on the phone with us from the UK, talking about her issues and her struggles with a brain cancer, and how she was literally on her deathbed and how cannabis has really affected her life and how she's doing nowadays. So, guys, don't miss anything. Don't go anywhere. Find us on Facebook. Like us. Love us. Go find our guests, Danyka and Timothy today. And hopefully you guys will tune in next week. This is In the Weeds, Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR, Plainfield, WGH, Hardwick. Find us at stonedagemagazine.com, streaming live. And here is Thomas Marcom. Thank you guys for a great show.
Thank you.
This is Tom with Vermont Grow Coaching, and welcome to Grower's Guide, your weekly beginner-friendly cannabis tips and tricks. Only on In the Weeds, Prohibition Talk Radio, WGDR 91.1 FM and WGDH 91.7 FM, or online on Facebook and WGDR.org. Today we're going to talk about maintaining a healthy root structure. At Vermont Grow Coaching, establishing a healthy root system is one of our first priorities when growing cannabis. Regardless of whether you're growing organically or synthetically, indoors or outdoors, a healthy root system is imperative to a successful grow. Why are healthy roots so important? The roots of the plant act as the plant's ability to uptake water, air, and nutrients. Without healthy roots, the plant could suffocate or starve, making a successful grow extremely difficult. Healthy root systems are also less prone to issues and disease, like root rot. For the purpose of this segment, we will be discussing planting organically in pots. Under most circumstances, the larger your root mass, the more potential the plant will have to finish at a larger size and have a greater yield. When growing organically, it is much more important to have a larger amount of available soil for the roots than it is with a synthetic grow. With a synthetic grow, you're force-feeding nutrients to the plants. With this method, technically, you could create a fairly large plant from a fairly small root ball. Although this method does have its benefits, we at Vermont Grow Coaching believe that a large, organically grown root system to be much healthier for the plant as well as the end consumer. So a key component in maintaining a large root mass is using a larger amount of soil. When growing in pots, such as fabric grow bags, we recommend a minimum of 7 gallons, but preferably 10 or more gallons of organic soil for your flowering plants. You can get away with smaller grow bags for the vegetative period, but we'll need a larger soil structure once the plants are ready to flower. At Vermont Grow Coaching, we prefer to transplant into the final grow bags roughly 2 weeks before starting the flowering cycle. This allows the root system time to establish in the new pot and allows the plant to jump back from any stress that it may have received. We always recommend using the fabric grow bags or other aerated pots. The air that comes in contact with the sides of the grow bags prunes the roots in the bag, preventing root circling and making transplanting easier. Preventing root circling is also a key component in root health. Compacted roots are yet another symptom of an unhealthy root system. Compacted soil prevents the roots from growing and expanding as they should, limiting their ability to uptake nutrients and water. Preventing compacted soil is easy. You can easily add perlite to your soil. Perlite is specifically designed for water retention and soil aeration. But if, like Vermont Grow Coaching, you intend to reuse the soil time and time again, or are lucky enough to be establishing a no-till grow bed, we strongly recommend volcanic lava rock over perlite. It's porous and lightweight while remaining solid. It won't hold as much water as perlite, but also won't be crushed into a fine powder over time either. Maintaining a proper moisture level in your soil is another requirement for a healthy root system, especially when growing organically. You will want to maintain a field-like moisture consistency to your soil. You should be able to see a couple of water droplets when you squeeze the soil in your hand. Finally, a grow guide on root systems would not be complete without beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi. Beneficial bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi grow within your soil. Specifically, they assist the soil structure and root development by maintaining water retention and soil aeration, as well as increasing nutrient uptake, root vigor, and overall root health. At Vermont Grow Coaching, we consider these microorganisms and fungi to be indispensable in the garden or grow room. There are many brands to choose from out there, so we highly recommend asking your local grow shop what they might suggest, or please feel free to reach out to Vermont Grow Coaching for our personal recommendation. We hope you enjoyed this week's segment of Grower's Guide. You should now have an idea of how to maintain a healthy root system. If you have any questions about today's segment or want to set up a consultation appointment, please feel free to reach out to Vermont Grow Coaching at vermontgrowcoach.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram or contact us directly at 802-342-5381. Again, this is Tom with Vermont Grow Coaching, and I'd like to thank you for tuning into Grower's Guide on In the Weeds Prohibition Talk Radio on WGDR 91.1 FM and WGDH 91.7 FM.